Shalom, we would like to welcome you to this young woman's event titled From Training to Choosing. Proverbs 22 verse 6 says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. The word for train up is hanach, which means to dedicate. As young women in the faith, you are being trained up and you are being dedicated to the Most High. You're being trained on how to be a woman of Yah. This choice is ultimately going to be yours. So this session, we will discuss transitioning from training to choosing to be a woman of Yah. As you think about your future, ask yourself, what does Yah have for you? Okay. Does it include him in the center? We have two women tonight who can speak from experience because they were raised in the faith and they have eventually chosen to serve the Most High themselves.
Shalom, Toda. Thank you, Tirza. It's an honor to be here speaking with everyone today. And I just pray that the Most High really just open your hearts and your minds to accept and hear what's going to be presented to you today. When Tirza approached me about taking part in Adorning the Bride, in the Adorning the Bride conference, instantly I knew that speaking to the young woman is something that actually I was prepared to do. And the Most High had put it on my heart to begin writing to the younger generation almost a year ago about patiently possessing your souls. We have here today Donasia Gray and Lady C.S. Glover, both of whom have lived their entire lives as daughters of Yah, as daughters of Zion. And both of them, although at different points in their lives now, are still choosing to follow the ways of the Most High. And, that being said, it's really a blessing to have you both here. So if either of you would like to go ahead and introduce yourselves, that would be great.
Well, my name is Christy Smothers Glover, and I'm in Buffalo, New York, born and raised in the Holy Truth. And it was a blessing, but it was indeed a journey. From training to choosing was the perfect title of what my life was. I am the First Lady of the Apostolic Rock Temple here in Buffalo, New York. The ministry was started by my parents, bishops and Lady Stephanie Smothers, in the early 70s. And my husband and I were charged, I want to say 2018, right before COVID hit, to take on the ministry. So I am raising daughters. And I have one son, thank the Lord. By the grace and mercy of the Most High Yahweh, he has lived to see 19. He has almost severed his thumb. I have almost kicked him out at 9. But he made it, and he is Holy Spirit filled and right along with us every Shabbat. So I am thankful to the Most High. It has been a journey. But I have my 19-year-old, my son. I have my 15-year-old, and I have a baby. We started over at 8. Those are my birth children, and the Most High blessed me with 3 bonus children, 25-year-old daughter, 22-year-old son, and a 10-year-old bonus son. So I have a full house for real, the real life full house.
Okay, shalom everyone. My name is Donasia Gray. I am 29 years old and have been walking in this truth my entire life, born and raised. I am in Maryland.
Oh.
Yeah. I am married and I have 2 children, a 3-year-old and a soon-to-be 2-year-old. I'm a stay-at-home mother. I do occasionally nanny. I homeschool. I help my parents run their business, as well as working on my own little businesses at home, doing what I can. I am very grateful to be here to talk to everyone. Like Lady C.S. Glover said, From Training to Choosing is the perfect title. That's exactly what we do in this walk, you know, especially being raised this way. You're trained away, but then you have to make a choice for yourself eventually. So thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
Yeah, Donasia, can you describe growing up in the faith, and in what ways were you raised differently than other peers your age?
Sure. So for a long time, I didn't actually realize I was growing up differently from anyone else. I knew there were certain things that we didn't do or things that we didn't eat, but in my mind, it was everyone else who didn't do those things. They were the ones who were, I guess, the minority. I was homeschooled, and all my friends were also believers until I was closer to being a preteen. So again, this was just like the norm for a long time growing up. We dressed differently. We only wore skirts and dresses. On the Sabbath, we didn't go out. We didn't listen to regular music or watch TV. We never listened to rap or R&B. And even to this day, I don't know half the oldies but goodies. And we barely watched anything beyond educational and biblical. So it wasn't until I started making outside friends around being a preteen that I realized that maybe I was the minority because there was nobody else that knew what I was talking about and what I did. I don't know. It just never really dawned on me for a very long time. One of the things that was really different for me in the beginning was I was always invited to go out on Sabbath, and I'm like, yeah, no, I can't do that. And they're like, oh, why not? You know, who doesn't do things on a Friday night or a Saturday during the day? You know, and I was just like, well, I can't go. So, and then I wouldn't really know the popular things that people were talking about at the time. And then I started to realize as I even got a little older that even some of my believing peers were beginning to make choices that were different, or even being raised slightly different than in my house. However, for me, growing up was fun. I love the time that we spent together as a family. I loved our Bible studies. And I think that time period of when you're young, it was just so focused on, you know, following the Most High. And so it became an everyday part of life that I didn't realize that it was much different until I was way older, at least like 12 or 13. Like I read books and things, but even then it was just like, oh, this is make-believe. This is just all pretend, you know? So it was different, but I think that protection and covering that I received kept me over for a time where I was a little bit stronger to deal with the adversity that would eventually come.
Okay, so I would say, how was it different? Oh, was it different? That was the question, right? I can't be like Miss Donasia, Sister Donasia. I knew right away. My father actually converted to this way. Before that, he was a pastor in First Day Church. So right away, and it's nothing but pastors and ministers on both sides of my family. So I knew we were different from the moment I can have knowledge of awareness. It just wasn't the Sabbath. The Sabbath wasn't an acceptable reason to go to church on Saturday, even though it was in the 10 Commandments and it was right there. And we had the 10 Commandments movie. And I don't understand. Everybody watched Ramses and the building of Egypt, but we were still considered an occult growing up simply because I went to church on Saturday. So I knew right away we were different. Oh boy, my childhood best friend, we became best friends because she asked for my number and she called me, and I knew she was going to call me after sunset. It was the weekend. She was like, Christy, let me get your number. And so she called me on a Friday night, and my mother said she wouldn't mind me mentioning her name. My mother told her, Peaches, Christy doesn't talk on Friday night. It's the Sabbath. And from that point on, she would tell me, and she would try to get home before sunset on Friday so we could finish talking about what we were talking about in school and everything. And it became a little joke. Okay, I got to get home before, what's that called? The Sabbath. So, and I want to say I was in seventh grade, sixth, seventh grade. That's how involved my mother was in making sure we walked the straight line, and anyone that may have connection to us knew that we were walking the straight line.
And that was in the days where we had the corded phone.
Yes. We didn't have the cell phones.
We didn't have the cell phones. No, we
Right.
did not.
Couldn't sneak and make phone calls back then because she can pick up the phone in the other room, and did plenty of times. And keeping the holy days was the best thing. And the Sabbath was the best thing. I remember even as a child when I noticed something different coming into the house when the Shabbat would enter in, and preparing for Shabbat was big in my mother's house. We all had to clean. As far as my sister and I, we had to clean and prepare for Shabbat. It was a part of womanhood growing up. What are you going to do as the Shabbat comes in? So it was big.
Donasia, what about you with getting ready for Shabbat and everything? Was that part of your life growing up?
Yes, it was just like Lady Glover said. It was a very big part, preparing for Sabbath. It's just myself, and I have two other sisters. So like she said, that was the woman's work. My father was at work. We spent all day cleaning, cooking, preparing. We all had our own Sabbath chores that had to be done. And she's right, it was just a whole different feeling once the Sabbath came in. And I think, like you said, it stands out just looking back on your childhood. Like the Sabbath was one of my favorite things. And that is something that I even strive to put into my kids now. Like, because after sunset, that was our family time. We did our Bible studies. We would play Bible, Scrabble. My mother would try to find different ways to turn regular games into Bible games. And we slept together on Sabbath. Either me and my sister slept on my parents' floor as we got bigger, and it was just like one big sleepover, and it was great. Yeah, it was definitely a fantastic time.
Choose your friends that respect what you believe and don't pressure you to do anything differently. So much so that they will almost do what you're doing to a certain extent. But it takes a special type of person to do this full time, real time.
Well, one of your friends did choose to do this full time.
Yes, she did. I can tell our story because it's rather funny. I would love to take full credit for us choosing our friendship. But my mom was picking me up from school, and she would see this then teenager, we were kids. She would see this young lady, as my mother would tell this story. I saw this young lady walking up to the school in her book bag. And my mother will ask me every single day I came home, did you make friends with that girl? I said, no, Mommy, I haven't talked to her yet. Next day of school, Christy, did you talk to that girl I told you to talk to? Are you her friend? I want you to make friends with her every day. So I said, well, mommy, I don't know her. So this one day, we became friends. And I talked to her. And at this time, I said, okay, well, I'm going to go after school. I'm going downtown to study the name of God. I said, I'm doing a study on the name of Yahshua. And she said, are you? And she came with me to the library and researched the true name of the Most High with me. And from that point on, I started talking about the Sabbath. She then said, okay, I'm gonna come to church with you. It was actually choir rehearsal. That's why I say a real friend will gravitate to the truth. So she says, okay, well, what are you doing? It was a Friday night. I said, well, we have choir rehearsal. She said, I'm gonna come. And we had choir rehearsal, and she had the spirit of the Most High touched so much during that rehearsal, and she was touched. She was my friend that did join and accepted the truth for what it is, the truth, and knew she was called. And yep, Sarita, First Lady Parker, and their assembly is in Charlotte, North Carolina, Temple of Hope.
But you know that you obeying your mother, you know, and going ahead and making the move to befriend this young lady.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a soul, you know, that was gathered for the Most High. And you know, it's just really beautiful. That is a beautiful story. That is wonderful.
Thank you so much.
One of the things that Lady Glover said helped me to let go of some friendships, actually. You know, a true friend is a friend who will at the least respect your way of life. And when I was younger, one of the very first friends I made outside of the faith was a neighbor. And, you know, she lived 2 doors down from me. So we played outside, had fun, all these things. She would come to service with me. You know, she knew that what we were doing on Sabbath was nothing. You know, she had a front seat in a lot of these things. And then as we got older and started to just live our lives, because when we first were friends about 12, so like when we got driving age, like 18, 19, things like that, you know, she would start inviting me out, and I'm like, it's Sabbath. She's like, oh yeah, I forgot. And I'm like, girl, what? Or she would invite me over and she'd be like, oh, what you want to eat? I got this, this, and this. And I'm like, girl, I don't eat those things. And she's like, oh yeah, I forgot. And that is when it dawned on me that, okay, well, you aren't actually a good friend. Like, because you have no excuse. You were literally there growing up. And part of it was the norm of believing that once you get to a certain age, you know, you don't just have to do what your parents told you to do. And I think that for a long time, that's just what it was perceived as. Oh, you're just doing what your parents told you to do. Or you're just following. I'm like, well, if I'm doing it independently outside of my parents, then this is what I'm deciding to do for myself. And then as I got older, like in my 20s, and the friends that I made in my 20s, the thing that is very interesting about this world is that, and that is part of the downfall, unfortunately, is the belief that we can just all do what we want to do. Oh, that's good for you, but that's not going to work for me. And I'm just like, wait, how can you say that? You know, we're having a conversation about the truth. And you're like, that's your truth. I'm like, wow, there's only one truth. But that is like a big thing that, you know, I heard in my conversations that I would have with people and things like that. It was just, well, that's what you're going to do, but that's not really for me. So now that I'm married with children, most of my friends are my family, people in my congregation. You know, just the mindset of people my age just isn't there yet. And I'm doing a Bible study with my sisters and some cousins, and she said something that was very profound. She was like, unfortunately, when you're living in the world, you wait until you get to a certain point in your life. You're like, oh, wait a second, maybe I should worry about my soul. And, she's in her later 30s, and she's just like, I'm now coming to that thought process. And it's just amazing to me, because talking to my mother, there were so many of them in their 20s and late teens, and they were looking for the truth and searching for the truth and worrying about their soul from then. And now all the people I come across is like, oh, I have time for that. I have time for that. I can focus on that later. And when that's not the case. But yeah, sorry, circling back. Like Lady Glover said, it's very important in choosing your friends in that way, people who are actually going to be respectful and listen, because you don't know whose souls are out there to be saved. And the obedience that not only you had for your mother, but your mother had for, she listened. There was something that told her, go for that little girl. There was just something there. And if she hadn't listened, that's a soul that could have been lost. And I think that's a big important message as well. We have to listen to who the Father is putting in our hearts and our minds.
Was it a big shocker, when you grew up and or just growing up? Like, was it traumatic?
Like, as far as you're saying, as far as experiences outside of the home and outside of like their microcosm, their world.
Yeah, like we have like a huge brick wall that goes all the way up to the sky around our children and our families, and so it's just going to be a shocker totally for them to just understand that of course people are different, and
it does not take long to acclimate to the world. Not long at all. They thought, and I would hear different chatter about me growing up. Because I was so clingy with my parents, and we had this different, separate type of religion. Oh, the talk was, oh, Christy's gonna be buck wild. Just wait till she gets older to make her own choice. She's not gonna choose this. She's gonna go out in the world, and she is gonna, when she gets a taste of the world, it's too stringent. No, never once. By the mercies of Yahweh. No, it actually, I probably would not probably, I know I would not be here talking. I wouldn't even be alive if it wasn't for the way my parents raised me. It absolutely, without question, saved my life and quality of life. I would have hurt myself, at least, because the truth and being raised this way gives you a certain protection that you just don't get the other way, because the rules are allowed to be amended. Let's just say it as it is. You can amend it, but the Sabbath, like Sister Dinasia said, it was family time. You shut everything else down. You focused on the Lord and family, and that was our protection for sure.
I remember you saying that the Sabbath kept you.
Yes, it did.
When you grew up, and I guess people was doing all kinds of things out.
Oh yeah.
And it protected you. It was a layer of protection. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was. It was my protection. Mm-hmm. Real talk. It was my protection.
I do remember a time where I didn't make the right choice, and that stuck out to me for a very long time. So, like I said, even though I was homeschooled, my mother signed me up for an after-school program. I don't remember. I was like 12 or 13, and I stayed in the program until I aged out. And one of the things they did, they had once a year we would have a showcase, and it was actually on the Sabbath. I don't remember how old I was, but my mother let me make my own choice if I would go or not, and I chose to go. And it was the worst experience ever. Like, on the outside, it probably looked like I was having a good time, but I felt so guilty. Mm-hmm. And I just knew that I was doing the wrong thing. And I've literally never I've never done anything on the Sabbath, since then. And I think that was a big part of it, was the fact that my mother let me make my own choice, because I did ask her if I could go. And she was like, you're old enough to make that decision for yourself. And I think that was something that I had to, experience, because once I'm looking back now, being the oldest, a lot of things I did do when I was younger was to make sure, okay, I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing, looking for that approval. And when she told me to make the choice for myself, it wasn't like, I'm going to judge you either way. I don't know what she was thinking. She probably was just like curious what I would do as well. But it wasn't like, well, if you do go, I'm going to be so upset with you or whatever. It was just the opportunity. Well, this is what is being presented in front of you. What are you going to do? And I will admit I made the wrong decision. But I learned from that decision. I took that with me, and even growing up, I kept making some pretty wrong decisions. But I feel like for me, almost what you're saying, that diversity training, I don't think that there was no real training that could have happened. I think just having the opportunity to make those decisions for yourself is what helps you get along. There was a time period, I was homeschooled my entire life, and then I went to community college at 16. And then when I was 17, I don't even know what happened, but I started to make friends, and it was just a completely different experience. And I learned a lot about myself based on the choices that I made. I learned a lot of my own weaknesses. Like, those are things you can't be trained on. You can be trained on and taught the right things to do, but you don't know what you're going to do until you're faced with that situation. And I think the biggest thing I know, like looking back, and something that I want to make sure that I tell my children and everyone else, that as humans, we make mistakes, and we cannot let the adversary hold those mistakes against us. I know for a very long time, my relationship with the Most High suffered because of that. And even though my mother always say, you can't hold it against yourself, you have to know it within yourself, because then that's just a divide. And I think that's where the diversity training, quote unquote, comes in. Just knowing how to combat the adversary when he uses certain things against you, because everyone is different. Like, my sisters, we grew up in the same household, but we have completely different experiences. We went all homeschooled, all went to community, except for my youngest sister. We both went to community college, but we went completely different paths because we're just completely different people. So you don't really know what a person needs, except for just filling your toolbox with what you need to defeat the adversary. I think it's difficult for me to pinpoint an exact moment where I can say, aha, now I'm choosing this way. But, because my mother always told us growing up the same exact thing. We have to make the decision to follow the Most High for ourselves. And I didn't really understand what that meant. And it wasn't until I actually got married, and I was put into for me, was a very isolating situation. And it was then when I realized, making the choice to follow the Most High was beyond just keeping the Sabbath, keeping the commandments, keeping the feast days. It was choosing to have that relationship with him. And it was unfortunate that, that I came to that decision after I was married, because then, if my responsibilities changed completely. I didn't have the free time that I had before to devote to the Most High. And that's, at that point, all I wanted. I wish I spent more of my time, pre-marriage, pre-kids, just working on my relationship. I think that is what it is to follow Yah for yourself. It's beyond just the actions. It's having a relationship with him for yourself. And, the basis of a strong relationship is time. And, when you're young and you're living at home, there's so much time that you can spend just cultivating that relationship. And that, to me, is what it means to choose the Most High for yourself. So in that sense, I guess it was a long time until I got married, when I made that decision, because everything else, following the truth, that was never a question. That was something that was like, well, this is what I'm going to do because this makes sense. You know, this is the truth. I'm not doing anything else. So that in itself was never an issue. There was never a moment where I said, oh, maybe I want to go out and do this. No, I was always going to follow the Most High, but it was that having that one-on-one personal relationship. That is when I think I really chose him for myself.
I knew a little younger. I really, really, really loved the Lord. I love the Most High. I loved him. Maybe it was because of I had a certain endearment towards him. And maybe my mom in battling her sickle cell disease, and hearing my grandmother cry out. She was, the scripture talks about wailing women. She was a wailer. And she actually taught me how to pray. I love the Lord. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. Lord, did I? And the rod helped me out with that too. Thank the Lord for the rod of chastisement. That saved my life too, without question. And but I made my choice at 17 years old. And I was a senior in high school, and I went to performing arts school. And I had sang this lead song, and it was because of that song we got chosen to go to San Francisco. And they flew the entire class out to San Francisco. And of course, it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, my day. And I remember saying, I can't go. I keep the Sabbath. And by then, all my classmates knew, okay, well, Christy, no, that's her Sabbath. And they tried to convince me to go. And the kids were like, we'll keep the Sabbath with you, Christy. That Saturday after we sing, we won't do nothing. We'll stay in a hotel room with you. I just said, I can't do it. I cannot sing at this performance on a Saturday. The principal called my mom to say, well, can she go? And I remember my mom telling the principal, this isn't my choice. This is Christy's choice. And she's choosing not to go. And I remember them not believing my mom and them secretly talking to me. Well, do you need me to talk to your mom for you? I'm like, I'm not going. This is not what I do. And I was 17. So we've made some mistakes. Yes, we have. I have made tons of them. Tons of them growing up in the faith. But we rebound because of our training. We're able to bounce back stronger, even better, so we can raise these babies so they can have the opportunity to be saying the exact same thing we're saying.
Do you have any words for our young women watching who are growing up in the faith?
Set out what your standards are and don't compromise. You would never have to. The moment you have to compromise what your standards are, then you've already lost leverage and you've already lost. Don't compromise your standards. And our faith is a standard. It is our standard. Our faith is what keeps us and it makes us who we are. You take away our faith, it's almost like literally sucking the soul. Like a skeleton, you take away our faith, we're the walking dead. If you allow that to be sucked out of you, and it will happen, just as sure as you're alive, it will happen if you compromise the standards of our faith.
Yes. So for all the young women who are watching and still growing, know that you are not perfect. You will make mistakes, but don't let the adversary hold those mistakes against you. You can always turn to the Father. As long as you have breath, you can go to him, you can repent and pick right back up. Create a substantial relationship with him now, before you become responsible for your own household. Focus on him. And above all else, seek Yah before doing anything, big and small. I think that is the biggest thing You know, it's almost like Lady Glover said, that is our standard. That's what we're supposed to check everything with. You know, sometimes we get so caught up in just living our lives that we forget to seek him first. When seeking him first and waiting on him can save us heartache and pain in the future. Reach out to your elders, seek wise counsel, and don't be ashamed of any mistakes that you may have made, because you are loved, you are precious, you are treasured. You know, we are an important part of the body. Just never give up. You know, keep working, keep striving for the Father.
Amen. And with that being said, you know, I wanted to circle back around to the topic and the title of, you know, of tonight's speech regarding with patience possess ye your souls. It is so important that we really learn the fruit of the Spirit, patience, because you are going to go through things in life and have many experiences in life, but be patient with yourself. Yah wants to sup with you. He wants to meet you. He wants to engage with you. The Father does not want to lose you. And so be patient with yourself. Continue to strive for perfection every single day, and don't give up. Yah is with you.